Hi, good afternoon, everyone from here Incheon, Republic of Korea. Welcome all of you back to the MCR 2030 webinar series. My name is Muttarika Pruksapong, Program Management Officer from UNDRR Global Education and Training Institute here based in Incheon, Korea. We are very delighted to bring you back to this MCR 2030 webinar series. Today is a very special one that we jointly organized with the ARISE Network, the Private Sector Alliance for Disaster Resilient Societies. And we'll be featuring the topic around engagement of the private sector partnership, particularly on improving the city's climate resilient infrastructure and also in enhancing business resilience and the engagement to support cities in resilience building. The session will bring two organizations from the ARISE Network in today's session. The first part will be from Resilience, which is the engineering consultancy company supporting resilience to climate change. And they will be presenting some of the very useful tools that you can help to assess and support building of the infrastructure in the way it is climate resilient. The second part will be from Miyamoto International on behalf of USAID Advanced Program in Jakarta, which focuses on advancing private sector engagement in disaster preparedness and response, particularly in Indonesia. The session will primarily be all in English today, and it will be 90 minutes. We welcome any questions you may have for the speakers through the Q&A box within the Zoom settings. Where if you go down to look for Q&A, you can type the questions there. Now, just to begin the session, I would like to invite Mr. Sanjay Bhatia, Head of Global Education and Training Institute of UNDRR, to give a few words of the welcoming. Over to you, Sanjay.
Thank you, Mai, and welcome to all the participants from around the world. And a special thanks to Resilience and Miyamoto International for their support to this webinar. As all of you know, Making Cities Resilient 2030 is a global initiative aiming to help local governments, so not just cities, but other forms of local government like provincial governments and district governments, to increase their resilience to disaster and climate risks. And today we have more than 1,380 cities joining, covering 380 million urban population. The MCR 2030 builds upon the lessons learned from the Making Cities Resilient campaign, which some of you might have heard of. And that closed after 10 years with 4,360 cities. But one of the key feedbacks was that cities need help on implementation, and they need to access service providers. And that is why we have this link up and this collaboration with the ARISE, which is a global network of private sector companies working on resilience. And there are a number of services that ARISE partners could offer to the MCR 2030 cities. And today we have two of the ARISE partners to discuss that. So look forward to the presentations, but also hope that the participating cities and urban practitioners find it useful. And please feel free to add your questions to the Q&A box so that we can cover during the discussion. So with that, welcome again, everyone, and over to you, Mai.
Thank you, Sanjay. And now, I would also like to invite Sarah Wade Apichela, Head of the Partnership and Stakeholder Engagement Unit of UNDRR, who oversees also the ARISE program, for her welcoming remarks. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Mai, and a warm welcome to everyone. We're very pleased to be having this webinar and series and hope to continue it. So just to bring a few a little attention to the private sector. We know already that it's a critical stakeholder and partner to help cities and governments and society at large catalyze change for climate and disaster risk-informed business practice and investment. And we also know that the private sector accounts for over 80% of investment in any given country, with much of the work really centered in large cities. At the same time, small and medium enterprises represent an estimated 90% of businesses, particularly in developing countries, and 50% of employment worldwide. So UNDRR's Private Sector Alliance for Resilient Business, ARISE, seeks to engage private sector, both large and small, as the main stakeholder engagement mechanism of the private sector. The network advocates and aims to activate risk-informed action in 4 focus areas around SME resilience, investment, insurance, and also resilient infrastructure, which we will learn about much more from 2 of our ARISE members today, Resilience and Miyamoto International. So ARISE networks do pilot localized programs. They aim to capture and share good practices and work to influence risk-informed business practice within the sectors and communities, and they look forward to partnering where possible with local government. So we're pleased again to have this joint webinar. We hope we can help match the city needs with private sector office service and to make cities more climate and disaster resilient. So looking forward to the exchanges and your questions in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So now let's go into the meat of the webinars today with our first partner here, Resilience. We'll have 2 speakers from Resilience speaking today. First is Sissa Begombo Priso, Resilience Project Manager. She is also an architectural engineer with vast experience in civil engineering, architecture, heritable buildings, and urban design, and has been working a lot on the projects on cities' vulnerable assessment and resilience building. Sissa also will be joined by Didier Soto, Head of Digital Solution and GIS-based Resilience Project Manager, who leads the development of methodologies relative to the vulnerability assessment of transport infrastructure and climate-related risk exposed territories using GIS decision-making tools. So we are very excited to hear more about what Resilience is doing in this end. So over to you, Sissa and Didier. The floor is yours.
Thank you everyone. So to present ourselves, we are Resilience. We are a climate change adaptation design office, and we work in design, building, and operate resilient infrastructure in the cities. Next, please, Didier. So we have 3 main activities: consulting, modeling, and project coordination. We do vulnerability assessment and impact studies by combining technical and financial evaluation, but also training and audit and compliance. We mainly use a weather and climate data service and do predictive maintenance and monitoring, and are able to propose integrational of technical solution, coordination and collaborative engineering, and project management assistance to upbuild the resilience of the project we work on that are on a neighborhood building scale, but mostly city scale. Next, please, Didier. Our work is based on 2 key partnerships. The first one is on the space and climate data and on building and infrastructure. We work with remote sensing from the CNS, predictive models, and spatial data, but also able to work on building and infrastructure through digitalization, monitoring, and engineering. You have here at the center of the slide, first example of the people that we work with. So the UN environment, the IFC, the Global ABC, UCN, ISO, and Lab Recherche Environnement. Next, please. Since we started our activity in January 2019, we have more than 80 projects around the globe, including a lot of projects on cities resilience in more than 60 countries. In red, for example, you can see the project the countries where we have projects that have already been realized and in progress. In purple, the project in the future projects, and in blue, the projects that are under development. Next, please. And now to be more precise about the people that we work with and the business segment that we have, we work with international funders, so the European Commission, World Bank, IFC, GIZ, but mostly with city and states. So the city of Paris, Senegal, the Kingdom of Morocco, for example. Also real estate developers, as the one that you can see here, and we will present one of our main projects in our use cases. Network operator, so about roads, airport, railways, and also, of course, construction and industry, Vinci, Ferrovial, Orano. Next, please, Didier. Now, let's talk about our main tool, that is the one that will present you today, the Resilient Performance Assessment. Next, please. So the Resilience Performance Assessment is a tool that is based on the use of spatial data. Through that use of spatial data, we are able to provide different services. The first one is to be able to do climate change current and future impact mapping, infrastructure action planning in the context of the city. So on the bottom of the slide, you can see an example of a hypervisor that we are able to create to pilot, communicate, and strengthen capacities of the city that are designing different projects of the city. Then we're also able to use spatial data to do climate change impact modeling and warning system design. On the picture on the upside, we can do flood mapping, but also urban heat island modeling. And through all of this information, we are able to do CAPEX and OPEX and investment rentability calculation, which means we can oppose investment cost calculation versus the cost of inaction, but also able to do efficiency and rentability calculation to be able to propose more virtuous economic strategies planning by anticipating a multi-risk warning system. Finally, all of this information help to do transport and logic stream optimization, process adaptability, and capacity building at the scale of the city. Next, please. Now, to be more precise about the methodological approach around the tool that is the Resilient Performance Assessment, we go from the ground, that is the reality, and we then do a territorial diagnosis. Then through the tool that I presented previously, we are able to do a predictive climate model through downscaling approach. Those downscaling approach will lead us to have a different layers, different GIS layers that will enable us to assess the ground, hydrological, biodiversity, and predictive climate patterns by adding elevation, soil, vegetation, and rainfall. Through all of those information, we will be able to locate potential location for city planning, urban design, and therefore to be a useful tool for the city, to be able to assess the project externalities, that is the cost, the risk, the benefit, and the technical prescription to upbuild the resilience of the project of the city and the city overall. Next, please. Finally, all of the work that we do was taught in a specific framework that are the 10 principles for effective action from the global ABC. Indeed, we co-written those principles with the Global Alliance for Building and Construction and ADEME, which is the Agency for Ecological Transition in France. Those 10 principles emphasizes on the urgency of those actions, the need to take into consideration every stakeholders of the project, the need to also consider adaptation along the entire life cycle of the assets, to implement adaptation and mitigation in tandem, but also to be able to understand that climate risk data will come with uncertainty. Finally, we should also be able to think beyond the asset level by considering nature-based solutions in order to promote a just adaptation of the building sector through the people, but also through the finances of the project in order to be able to fit adaptation measure for the local context. All of those principles are to be considered during the planning, construction phase, and maintenance phase of the urban assets of a city. Now that we talk about the theory, I would let my colleague Didier present you the different use cases.
So, hello everyone. I hope you hear me well. Thank you, Sisa, for this introduction. I will talk to you about the application of the resilience performance assessment, and the first use case of this presentation will concern the assessment of the resilience of urban real estate assets. Adaptation is a crucial need to ensure the security and the comfort of citizens in their housings. In this study, we work for CDC Habitat, which is the first French social house operator. We developed an application of the resilience performance assessment as a turnkey solution adapted to urban built assets. The tool scores current and future state of resilience performance by considering the application of urban planning recommendation at the scale of a city and building renovation at the scale of a neighborhood. The RPA, Resilience Performance Assessments, considers in this study 11 climate hazards, flooding, heat waves, wildfires, dryness, among others. We calculate an exposure score for different IPCC scenarios. Here, for example, the RCP 8.5 for the horizon 2050. This score is combined with the sensibility of urban assets to provide a final vulnerability assessment. I will begin the demo, but it's not launching, so I will, yes, here, sorry for this little time. The video will launch in now. Here you have a view of a GIS-based platform of the impacts of climate change of the built assets in urban areas. In the background, you have the exposure score to flooding, and the color range appears from the green to the red according to the urban vulnerability of assets. This visor allows to visualize the impacts of single hazards, but also their cumulative impacts. We can therefore identify which are the riskiest territories and which ones must benefit from specific policies to face current and future climate risk. Here, for example, you can have the view of different kinds of hazards, and to define which are the most relevant policies in terms of urban planning or urbanism, you can use the analytic dashboards we developed. They are composed of specific menus. They help to quantify and qualify the impacts of each climate hazard on urban assets at the scale of a neighborhood or an entire city. For each asset, a global score is calculated per hazard and cumulative hazards. Then you have dedicated menus, as you can see on the screen, that propose you for each of your end users to qualify potential disorders in an urban territory in terms of security, comfort, uses, and services. Different marks could be obtained during this diagnosis processing. It helps to precisely determine the estimated and needed cost for each predetermined urban planning measure. Here, for example, you will have a screenshot of preventive and curative measures adapted to urban buildings. Here you have a precisely and needed estimation of cost for each measures compared to the cost of inaction. Synthetic dashboards are automatically produced, as you can see here. They allow to visualize the benefits of investment costs and to measure a resilience performance for each city. The Q&A box. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, colleagues, for your presentation. So let me just there are a few questions, so let me bring that to your attention. I think one question is this open source? Is there a link? And related to it, how can a city access? So what do they have to do? How can they approach you and all that? Over.
It's not yet an open source platform for IFC. This platform is hosted and belongs to IFC in their strategy of global platform. So it's not an open source, but Resilience is developing its own services, geospatial and climate change impacts platform services that will be launched in the second part of the year, and we will be very pleased to show you this kind of platform and services that could be brought to cities. But what you must know is that each kind of this use case, we develop them from scratch by developing each function according to the customer's needs. So we are not dependent on any kind of softwares or techniques. It's a philosophy composed of a visor that allows you to visualize impacts of climate change and dashboards to measure the resilience performance. This combination of the two tools and these two capacities of our multidisciplinary team is the main core of the innovation, but the development in itself is a turnkey solution adapted to each kind of your needs.
Okay, so that means then that the cost will also vary according to the situation, and that kind of leads to the next question. So how do you work with third-party funders so that cities can access these kind of services, or are there such arrangements so that we can promote, for example, the MCR 2030 cities to seek your support on risk assessment?
Yeah. In fact, we are open to each kind of opportunity to build projects with cities, with third parties, with international funders. We already made this for different kinds of approaches in different kinds of countries. We are now beginning a study in Morocco, in a Moroccan city, with this kind of agreement with a third party, with local stakeholders. We can use our networks to help you defining the most appropriate projects that could be of use for you.
Okay, and then there's another question. On average, how long does it take your team to develop a platform for each city? And what are the data sources used for these platforms? And how often are they updated? So 3 parts.
For the time, it depends on the complexity of the platform we wanted to develop. It could take 1 month, such as 1 year. For example, it could depend. We could be quick. We have a huge team and different kind of profiles, IT profiles, urban engineer profiles, such as CISA geographers that helps considering the solution in its complexity and its global integrative approach. For the data sources, we can use open data, we can use customers' patrimonial assets. If we are facing different kinds of data collection, we can propose alternative solutions linked to our expertise in spatial data analysis, as CISA mentions. You know that the width of spatial data allows you to benefit from different kind of satellite, airborne data that can help monitor climate change impacts. For dealing with infrastructures or urban plannings, we can go on field to make some kind of inspection. So we can find data, and it's not the data is not exclusively dependent to make the model. We can make the model and adapt the quality of the model to the data, but the model from one side could be built without the total amount of data that we could desire initially. And the third question, Sanidja, could you remind me it, please? You are mute. I can.
Sanjay, you are muted.
Sanjay, you are mute.
Sorry, it was about the time scale and the sources of data, which you have answered. There is another question about the sources of data. Says that city planning also depends on other data sets such as geomorphological data, and to what extent has this been used in your modeling?
Geomorphological data are used to consider such climate hazards, such as landslide, for example, that are clearly linked to ground patterns, geomorphology. In fact, when I will just go to the slide and share this to answer your question. Here, for example, concerning geomorphological data, as Sisa mentioned, we consider.
Can't see the screen, Gigi.
Okay, thank you, Sisa.
You're welcome.
As Sisa mentioned, we consider the full reality, 2D, 3D, 4D reality of a territory, and we make the global system to consider all kinds of environmental patterns that could be changed with climate change inputs. And geomorphological patterns are obviously included here. You can see some kind of elevation, soil, slopes, and we integrate geomorphological data with urban shapes to consider the interaction between all the aspects that could be triggered during a climate change impact occurrence.
Thank you very much, Sisa and Didier. I think we've covered all the questions, and if there's any link which you'd like to share, you can put in the chat where people can contact you if they need. We have more than 110 participants today from around the world. So with that, I think we can go over to the next part, which is Miyamoto International. And over to you, Victor.
Yes, so next speaker will be from USAID Advanced Indonesia Program. Victor Rampet, he's a program manager of this program and has been working extensively in engaging with the private sector in disaster preparedness and response, particularly in Indonesia. He also has a rich experience in the field of disaster risk reduction and private sector engagement from various experience with the Save the Children in Indonesia, UNICEF, Indonesia Center of Humanitarian Leadership Academy, and many more. So we'd be very happy to give the floor to you, Victor, to hear more about your program there in Jakarta. Over to you, Victor.
All right, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for UNDRR 2030, UNDRR Rise, and all others. Greetings from Indonesia, selamat, and I'm happy to share about what we have done especially in the city of Jakarta. And city of Jakarta is the capital city of Indonesia, at least up till now, because our government is moving to another city in 3 to 4 years to come. But Jakarta is the most condensed city in Indonesia, and we would like to share about how we are trying to develop a business resilience in Jakarta. I think Mia and Eric, I have a problem of sharing because internet is a problem here. So, okay. All right. If you start from the beginning, this is the first slides. Okay. Eric, could you start from the beginning? This is, all right. Yes, it's Jakarta. Next, please. Because we are more, Miyamoto is expert on structural, and therefore we are more on building resilience on earthquake, because earthquake poses a significant risk to businesses in Indonesia. In reality, many are only one disaster away from closure. We have been experiencing, and Jakarta is actually earthquake prone city. So we are just preparing for the worst, but we are also trying to see and then develop a resilience to the best. So it's stronger UNDRR links are needed between public and private sectors. This is actually the thing that we are trying to build awareness among the Jakartanese, both governments and all others, and the non-government, to be resilient in terms of this. Is there a problem with my mic? Sorry.
Yes, Victor, if you can speak a bit closer to the microphone, it will give a bit clearer sound.
All right. I hope this is better.
Yeah, this is better. Thank you.
Yeah. We need to have a stronger links in Jakarta, because we are just expecting one of the worst earthquake, but also preparing for the best. Next slide, please. This is something that we are doing. Of course, the goal is to increase private sector disaster preparedness and involvement in disaster risk management for reduction in lives lost, people injured, and social and economic disruption from earthquake in Jakarta. So specifically in Jakarta, that's why we work together with the city of Jakarta, with the provincial disaster management office, with three
objectives. First is to advancing disaster risk governance, public and private engagement. This is something that still quite new in the context of Indonesia, but probably elsewhere, because private sectors are considerably always being treated as an ATM machine. So this is something that we would like to at least build this awareness that public and private engagement is increased governance, and then improve disaster planning and preparedness for data for planning and preparedness, where we need to do something better. And then local capacity development. We are trying to create a forums for knowledge sharing, practical tools among all our stakeholders. Next one, please.
We tried to start with 11 businesses in Jakarta. And this 11 business, we're not talking about big business. Say, for example, the first one on the left top, it's Cosma Kaliwe. They have only 1.5 employees. I mean, one full-time and then one part-time employees. And then this is something from the smallest one, but also there's a state-owned state-owned bank, Bank Mandiri. Of course, it's a big bank, and then of course there's a big mall from the big private sector groups, Mall Artagraha, and then also there are several others, medium and big private sectors. So we are trying to see what can we do in this business resilience efforts to help businesses could really develop their businesses. I'll share you the tools next, but it's interesting that from these 11 businesses, of course, not all could really reach the whole things, but as we are doing our steps of trying to share our tools with them, they are learning something, and now they become the champion for others, and of course we are going to scale this up and cascade this with the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce. So the steps are, next slides please. These are the 4 steps. First, we're trying to local community disaster risk assessment. This is probably something that we are trying to develop from the context. We try to build these tools and try to see if this could happen, and then one of a kind, and then we have done this, and then all of the 11 business learned the way that they didn't know before, and also we share this with the government. But this is something that I'll explain more later. And then the second one is business resilience assessment. This is about the place where the business is. It could be the office, it could be the plants, it could be the business place of the private sectors, which they need to be resilient, and then they need to have a certain knowledge about their buildings, and then they just cannot, especially related to earthquake hazard. They just cannot let the business, the building, not being assessed properly. Otherwise, they are going to lose lots of losses. And then the third one is disaster scenario planning. We're glad that this is something that we developed. We borrow from Professor Megro Maki from Tokyo University. This is a personalized and specific related to relevant to business. And this is something that business can imagine what happened with them when they have to face earthquake and other disaster. And of course, the fourth one, it's a private sector engagement in disaster risk management. We provide learning session, we provide capacity building, and we provide all other media so that they could have a forum of sharing, both the public and private, and also some civil society organization, so that they will know about what they would need to do as a multi-stakeholders forum in trying to build their resilience. Next slide, please. The first step is local community disaster risk assessment. This is about businesses and the neighborhoods are intrinsically linked and interdependent, never more so than when disaster strikes. So if you can see into the circles, the local business is like we're trying to make it as a center, but the immediate neighborhoods, we have to learn about the immediate neighborhood, what is in the surrounding, and then what will be the, say for example, the local governance, which we meant is not just the official government of Indonesia go to the village level or the kampung or the smallest one, but it's also the non-official one. Sometimes we talk about cultural and religious leaders. So immediate neighborhoods, and also they need to know about what happened in the housing. According to Indonesian regulation, if a disaster happens, the government will only cover the houses which are owned by the owner. So if you rent a house, if you live in an apartment, if you live in other areas, they just could not get any support from the government. And also we're talking about other public buildings like schools, temples, mosque, church, and all others, and then public facilities like the community park, public park, and all others, and then infrastructures if there is a bridge or toll road in that area. So this is something that could impact. Inward impact is supply chains could be halted during any disaster, and then physical and human resources, they cannot go to the business place, or they cannot go out. And then infrastructures and services, the outward impact is to the wholesale. We learned the hard way, of course, when flood affected Bangkok, Thailand, that they have to stop lots and lots of supply chains, and they cannot really to host. They could produce, but they cannot really meet the demand of the surrounding areas. So we're talking about consumers. So the affected province, affected national, and affected international. This is something that we would like to put in the core is local business and the immediate neighborhood. Next, please. And this steps is about a practical and integrated approach. This is the tool that we try to develop and easier for business to understand. We're talking, sometimes we don't speak the same language. When we talk about disaster, it's most probably, civil society or NGO wording and language, or even the government language. But this is something that business can speak to with their language. And then also practical and integrated, and then improving integration with the local community. They merge the settlement neighborhood approach. This is something that actually what we are going to try to see, that neighborhood sometimes we don't see this as a political boundaries, but this is more on the people. Sometimes it could be in 2 provinces, it could be in 2 districts, it could be in 2 village, but it's something like it's not a geopolitical, it's not political boundaries, but it's more on the neighborhood approach. And then we talk also about business continuity planning, which we just when we did this, of course, BCP, but Indonesia just had with the support, of course, with the USA planning, we just have an Indonesian ISO, we call it Indonesian standard of business continuity management. So this is something out of this project. Also, we try to develop with the government of Indonesia. Business continuity management, we work with the BCM forum, and then other theoretical models. There are some of these, the activities, process, markets, physical resources, human resources, services. And then we're talking about elements of neighborhood governance, population, housing, non-housing buildings, basic services, infrastructure, resources, connectivity, and geography, and hazard. When we talk about hazard, we are talking about earthquake mainly, but there are also secondary hazard, could be flood or fire or a landslide in that area affected by earthquake. Next, please. Yeah, this is the second one, of course, business resilience assessment. We try to see the buildings of where the business place. We try to see, of course, from the structural and non-structural elements. When we talk about structural elements, we are talking about the construction, but also we're talking about non-structural, about the electricity. But of course, we're talking about, like, say, for example, the exit ways, and then the doors, and then where they do the storage, and then how they really try to provide good access of emergency exits and all others, which are not blocked with the all other stuff. So this is the business resilience assessment, and we are doing this, of course, with related with cost and benefit. If they spend $1, how could they actually try to prevent, and then of how many dollars if they could save if earthquake happens. And we're glad that there are at least 3 options for them. First, of course, to do the retrofitting. Oh, sorry, the first one is not the easiest one is to clear out the area that is has a very prone areas of structural and non-structurals, and then the second one is to do retrofitting for the building, and the third one is one company even move their buildings from the very prone areas of disasters in terms of area and community to another area that will be more safe and resilient. Okay, next one, please. This is the disaster scenario planning by Professor Meguromaki. And then, of course, this is something that based on process developed by Professor Meguromaki. His phrase is, if you cannot imagine, you cannot prepare for it. So this is more on imagination, based on 2 timelines. The timelines that we did the simulation, the post-disaster first. What happened, say for example, 1 hour after an earthquake? What happened 1 day after? What happened like 3 days, and then the whole thing? And then based on that, we could move back to what happened if you could prepare for an hour before the earthquake. What happened if you could prepare a week before? And then next, and that's not just standalone things. This is relevant with step 1 and step 2. Step 1, of course, they know about their condition, their neighborhood, so they know where to find help or where to support the neighborhood. But also they need to realize that if they need to do retrofitting or at least something to for the buildings, they can imagine if this thing could happen, the damage could be so bad. They need to prepare for the worst, and of course they are then have to decide whether to invest in trying to make the business place a safer place, and then also not to experience the worst damage. And then contextualize for business. Of course, each business has different contexts, and that's actually what we are trying to do. Say, for example, we're talking about a business that has nationwide. So they need to think about what will happen about supply chains. And then there's now, of course, the tourism business. One of them is tourism, or actually we're talking about fashion business. What will happen? This is different from banking, of course, and they need to really put this in the discussion. If they have all the context which is so different, they need to imagine according to their context. And then personalized injection, as I mentioned previously, they need to know about their employees. They need to know about what happens in the situation nearby, and then they even have to understand about the communication with communication link with all the employees, and then also the families. So this is what we call business resilience. And the fourth one, of course, the staff. We have been doing this with next, please. Yeah. Private sector engagement in disaster implemented through a series of online webinars and learning sessions. We invite all the experts because businesses, they need to know lots of things, but they also need to know the way the government does, the way the Red Cross and the way the NGOs and all others, because they cannot just be the one stand alone without knowing anything. That at least they could start building a good partnership, collaboration with all stakeholders in the surrounding. Next again. Yes, these are some of our learning session, and then about earthquake, and then road to GDPR, online learning session, including the risk financing and business continuity management. Those are the things that we are trying to provide to the businesses, and by doing this learning session, they could get the big pictures of a business as the one that could be affected by disasters, especially earthquake, but also they could provide some things to build resilience to the community. Next one. Yeah, this is, we're glad that we have done a collaboration, institutionalization and localization. After like several steps, we work with Kadin Indonesia Chamber of Commerce as strategic partners. We did a joint seminar in UNDRR Bali, May 2020, where all the members of Kadin all over Indonesia participated, and also we just signed an official collaboration just last month to support Kadin so that they could scale this up to the nationwide and even to the regional, but also to cascade this to all members of Kadins, which are everywhere in the nation. Next again. Yes, this is actually our phase. We are talking about the first one. We try to innovate and test and refine the initial program with pilot businesses, and with BPBD means the Provincial Disaster Management Office, and also with the RM sector, with the private sector forums. Back then, there was no Indonesian Chamber of Commerce unit of disaster management, but right after funded modification 2, we reflect, captures, and package, and we actually lubricate the birth of Kadin, the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce, and then we go forward, bridging and strengthening, localize, scale, and sustain, and institutionalize it with the after the GPDRR, with Kadin, with the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce, and the National Disaster Management Office. You can see that at first it's only Provincial Disaster Management Office, but now in this funded modification 2, we are talking about the National Disaster Management Office, which we can work together, of course, to scale this up and also to try to cascade nationwide. Next. This is actually trying to make it simple in a nutshell. Local community disaster risk assessment with business resilience assessment. These are the tools that we develop, and disaster scenario planning. Those are the 3 tools that we try to develop, because disaster scenario planning cannot be done without the first two, local community disaster and business resilience assessment, and then try to build awareness and then build their capacity in private sector engagement. That means strengthen ability of private sector to prepare for, respond to, and recover from earthquake, disasters, and then that will mean action plans. We are trying to create action plans, and then on the right-hand side, practical tools and frameworks shared across public and private sector to support earthquake disaster preparedness, information exchange, and learning, that more and more private sectors could be developed in their capacity, and then increase participation of business in disaster management, and then improve availability of earthquake and structured data for decision making. This is something that we are talking about business resilience champion. Of course, this need to be tested, but I could share there were at least 2 earthquakes happened in Jakarta, because the epicentrum is quite far, but it's a big one. It's only like less than 100 kilometers from Jakarta. But during those 2 earthquakes, at least our businesses, the pilot businesses, they could survive, and they could even televised by one of our national media, TV, about their preparedness and about they could support the neighborhood. Next one. Yeah. Miyamoto, of course, the USAID and funds implementing partner. Just this is not an introduction, but in the closing. We have built on decades of engineering expertise as well as experience responding to 100+ disaster, and Miyamoto support how partners address economic, political, social, student, and resiliency challenges in DRR. And then Miyamoto statement, make the world a better, safer place. Of course, that's how we would like to see this happen also in the USAID funds. And Miyamoto has worked in Indonesia since 2007. That, well, we know the context at least, and then Miyamoto Indonesia office launched it just recently in 2021. Those are from us, and then happy to share. There are some materials that you can see in the next slide. Next, please. Yeah, there are some YouTube and videos that you can see, and a program overview that you can get it for further information. Thank you so much, and hope we could build a city of resilience, not just in Jakarta, but all over the world globally. Thank you. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Victor. So there are a few questions. So let me start with the first one. Can your business neighborhood resilience model benefit from risk assessments presented in the previous presentation? So what resilience was talking about, and what could be the entry point?
Sure. Of course, we are trying to find the best tools, and then of course in Indonesia there are at least 2. Our government has already INARIS. If you are aware of that, you could type INARIS. INARIS is something that there's a personal INARIS, and there's also more on the like government. But INARIS could provide you with all kinds of risk surrounding your business, and that's what we put in the BNRF, because something that the business can see, even it's a real time. But of course, we are happy to learn from the previous presentation. And also in Indonesia, we have another one called disaster map, and disaster map is already like 3 to 4 hazard. And we also get a share about how people can report and also provide some of the condition in their area real time. So yeah, happy if we can share, but also happy we can get some of the previous one. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. So there's another question. You talked about the webinars. So are they catered to a specific country or specific place as per demand, or they are generic webinars by which you further communicate?
Okay, we have 2, or well, at least 2 webinars. No, 3 actually of the online things. There's an international webinar. If international, of course, anyone can join.
We did with Amazon, we did with Miyamoto Internationals, and then we did with with the ASEAN, the Southeast Asia countries, and then we did with all others. Those are the international. So all are invited to come, and then since we are also do now the collaboration with Indonesian Chamber of Commerce, and we just and Indonesian Chamber of Commerce just had an MOU with CBI, Connecting Business Initiative. Some of their webinar is USAID supporting this, and then this is something that could, all participants globally. But then the second one is national, but with English. Some of the English presentation, like just now we have it with all the USAID partners, but we are always from the private sector's angle. Because we are doing private sectors, and then of course with only Indonesian, when we try to reach out to the areas, the provinces in Indonesia, and of course the last one we're talking about the learning session. The learning session is catered according to the needs of the private sectors, what they want to do, and then we always share a questionnaire what will be the best in the next 3 months to come. So those are the webinars and online sessions.
Thank you. So there's another question about initial response from the private sector and how you get them to engage. How do you convince the private sector to be part of this initiative? Must be challenging.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not easy. Of course, we can get 11 out of 20 that we try to encourage them, and then trying to say how important is this. Of course, just talking about the hazard, not so many people in Jakarta aware of earthquake hazard in Jakarta, and it's not easy. So, but then of course with the this is something like when you have a network, you sometimes borrows the government hands and trying to convince, and then you also try to see this from the perspective and try to see the areas, and then show them the INARIS. Indonesia, we have this INARIS, and then this is your area, and then this is so. It takes time. It at least 2 months before we can convince them, and then of course it's not easy. But yeah, of course I cannot say A, B, C or something like that. But this is a process that is not easy, challenging. Yeah, I agree with that.
The another question is about the communication. So are you, you did reflect on it a bit in the presentation. So are you empowering the partners who are availing of your services to understand how to communicate before, during, and after disasters?
Yes. Well, to our business partners, of course, that's actually what we have been doing. We involve not just the National Disaster Management Agency, but the Meteorological and Geological Agency, because they are the one that has the early warning system. So, of course, by understanding the early warning system, they know how to do that. And also, we, of course, the expertise we borrow from universities, from the Indonesian Research Institute to provide the area and then all the, all the hazards and especially earthquake. But just recently, in terms of literacy and education and then communication, we just team up with Kadin, Chamber of Commerce, to have with the Indonesian radio network. So this is a nationwide. So we have once a month for private sectors, and then of course all others with CSO or government. But this is the thing that we would like to reach as many as possible, because we are just talking about Indonesia full of, I don't want to say a supermarket of disaster, but this is more or a laboratory of disasters, and we try to make these things as soon as possible. So we are just running as fast as possible to do the literacy.
Thanks for that. Another question, I guess then again, as you mentioned, the technical partner, the universities, but there is a question about how do you integrate a very high return period event? So like, like the one in 500 years or 1 in 100 years events into your planning process and assessment process?
Yes, thank you. That's actually what we did in our learning sessions. We try to find ways of communicating this to the business up till now, of course, and also we try to infuse that to the develop of the contingency planning. So we are actively involved in the Jakarta earthquake contingency planning, and that's how we try to infuse and then to see. But not only that, from the National Disaster Management Agency, they have a section called mitigation department, and we did there with the mitigation department. And now recently we are trying to see this even further. Try to see from the reconstruction and rehabilitation unit. We are developing now a pre-disaster recovery plan. So this is something new. But when business is try to be placed in this mindset that after disaster they could build the nation, they could build the destruction. This is the business. So the business should be still in business after disaster. So the pre-disaster recovery plan, and then of course that's how the contingency planning, and then the mitigation, and then the reconstruction and recovery pre-disaster. But also, as I mentioned before previously, that we developed this BCM, business contingency management. We have already a standard for this, and we try to encourage the businesses to try to apply this to, BCM from the disaster management perspective, not just BCM.
Thanks for that. So there was one question about the NAP of the country, which is the National Adaptation Plan. But I think what he's trying to refer to more is, how could you just throw some light on your engagement with and you did, but a little bit more on the engagement with the national governments and the local governments, and their policies, strategies, plans, so how you try to integrate probably the work that you're doing with the business sector into the local government's, let's say, plan, and to the and aligned with the national policies. Yeah. You're muted, please.
All right. Yes, of course, with the national government, with the national action plan, we communicate, and then that's how they try to explain to the businesses that government has this plan. And then I'm glad that finally the government has an MOU, official MOU with the Chamber of Commerce regarding disaster management. So the communication line is open wide, but now the challenge is to the subnational. When you talk about the local subnational, when we talk about Indonesia, the government, the national government is something that I don't say it's perfect, but it's something that they already get the ideas. And then remember, Indonesia has a champion, global champion for DRR for our presidents, like 8 years ago. So the national structures of disaster management and national action plans on disaster risk reduction is okay. But then, of course, to try to go further down to the subnational. That's why Sanjaya, our next plan with Kadin is at least to have 3 pilots of 3 provinces. Beside Jakarta is NTB, the West Nusa Tenggara, where earthquake happened 3 years ago, and then also Yogyakarta, which has an urban. We're talking about urban, not rural earthquake. This is urban. So try to create the ecosystem. I mean, that's the right word. Try to create ecosystem that the national action plan could be at least implemented with the local, provincial, and even cities action plan.
Okay, thank you. That's very good. So last question is, is there any role for the not-for-profit sector in this model? So it's of course targeted to businesses and for-profit, but is there a role, do you see, for the not-for-profit sector?
Of course, when we talk about, well, we learned at first from Hyogo framework with the in Indonesia we have the national platform in the global, and then also a provincial forum of the RR. This is how they could infuse. And when we try to speak or the same language, that's actually what we are trying to convey in our message to the non-profit organization. We are trying to provide the common grounds and then to discuss about the thing that they cannot and they can do. So together we can, and then together we could try to find the gaps and the not-for-profit. Say for example, just now we had a problem with accountability. There's a big things in Indonesia about an NGO, fraud of accountability, and we invite the Humanitarian Forum Indonesia, the not-for-profit forum, to provide us with ideas of what is the work of the humanitarian, and then the private sectors could learn. So we don't really do with non-profit organization, but we work with them, especially with some organization that has private sectors engagement. Say for example, World Vision Indonesia, Humanitarian Forum Indonesia. We work together with them, and then we always try to share learning with them. So this is a multi-stakeholder forums approach.
Thanks a lot, Victor. So actually one last question. So it is about how to access the services, from this project. So is there a link, or where do the participants of this webinar, they can contact someone?
Yes, it's already in my last slide of presentation. So there are some links there, and then of course, if you type USAID Advance, even USAID in their YouTube, they have this presentation, and then about the before and after, and then the expectation, because everything is about managing expectation. So private sectors, they when they questions how they would like to see this happen, of course we try to manage their expectations to be the best, and then business to stay in business. That's actually our phrase. Business have to stay in business in any kind of disaster, especially earthquake in urban areas. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Victor. This was very interesting, and just to let all the participants know, all these presentations, as Victor mentioned already, the last slide is the contacts. So all of these presentations will be shared with you on the web page. So with this, I hand over back to Mai. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sanjaya. And so with this, it has been very exciting to hear the experience of all the speakers and our colleagues from Resilience. If you want to turn on the camera, please do so as well. It's very important, the role of private sector in disaster risk reduction and resilience building. And you can see from two examples today, particularly on their first is the service that they can provide and work with the cities to help bringing the resilience in terms of infrastructure construction and doing the assessment of the vulnerability to make sure that the city builds in the way that it's more resilient. And also equally, private sector also has the role to make sure that their companies and enterprise organizations are able to withhold different type of risk and retain the continuity in providing the service to the cities, and make sure that urban setting operates properly in the resilience manner. So it has been really inspiring to hear both of examples from our speakers, DDA and also Victor. So thank you so much for joining us today. And as I mentioned, that this webinar is the first one that we, Making City Resilient 2030, is doing jointly, officially with Arise Private Sector Network. So this will only be the first one that we bring in this kind of good example from private sector, and please look forward for more series to come. And with this, I also thank you, not only the speakers, but also Arise team there in Geneva, our team here in Global Education and Training Institute, and those who are involved in the preparation of this webinar. And with this, I would like to close the session, and we look forward to see you again in the next webinar series that we will be organizing. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.